Good morning watch nerds, welcome to my channel and welcome to a head-to-head review that I hope some, if not all of you will find interesting. As usual, I've no idea which watch will win before I started, so I too will be in for a surprise, albeit I get mine before you. If you're interested in either of these watches, I've left a link to both of the reviews below. Now I've chosen these two watches because on paper they're close on specification, size, and they're both Garda watches. However, one costs around about twice what the other one does, but to be fair, there's a major reason for that. We'll get to it soon. So before we start, let's have a look at the dimensions of both watches. The Astor+Banks Fortitude has got a case of 38.5mm, a lug width of 20mm, a depth of 12mm and a lug-to-lug of 46mm. Once adjusted to fit my 17cm wrist, it weighs in about 130 grams. The San Martin SN0144, or Janzuan as some refer to it, has a case size of 39mm, a lug width of 20mm, a depth of 10.3mm and also has a lug-to-lug of 46mm. Now, partly because it's thinner than the Astor+Banks, it weighs a little less and comes in at 125 grams. Now, although the San Martin is only 0.5mm larger, it does in actual fact weigh that tad bigger. Here are some pictures of both on my wrist. Both watches will be marked out of 10 in the following categories: brand, movement and crown, case and crystal, bracelet and clasp, dial, handset and loom, versatility, presentation and packaging, the X factor and value for money. So first up is the brand. I think it's fair to say that most people in the watch community have heard of San Martin, although many look down on them because they don't like direct homages, although this model is an original design. That said, very few people ever question their overall quality. There is also the snobbery when it comes to Chinese watches, something I don't share. Astor+Banks are USA based. They claim to construct, QC check and regulate their watches in-house. Now, even though Astor+Banks may not be as well known, the very fact they're constructed in the USA, they hold a bit more kudos. Which means I'm going to give them an extra point, I think. So the Astor+Banks Fortitude gets an 8 out of 10, and the San Martin Janzuan gets a 7. Both watches have got the same movement, and that's the high beat automatic Miyota 9015. It hacks, it hand winds, it's very accurate if regulated correctly, it's very reliable, and it's got a power reserve of 42 hours. Now, although both of these watches are running to within a few seconds a day, and although it's rumoured San Martin do regulate this movement before it leaves the factory, Astor+Banks openly advertise they check and regulate each calibre. The crowns on both the watches screw down, are signed and they're nicely knurled. They're both about the same size, they operate the movement as they should do, and although the engagement on both is good, neither are buttery smooth. Simply because I know the Astor+Banks is regulated in-house, I'm giving it an extra point, so the Fortitude gets an 8 out of 10 and the SN0144 gets a 7. Moving on to the case and crystal. Well, they've both got slightly raised flat sapphire crystals with AR coating, so no extra points there then. To be honest, when it comes to the cases, there actually isn't that much in it. Both have got a combination of beautifully executed satin brushing and polishing, and both have got highly polished transitions, although the San Martin has got the additional chamfer on the underside. The Astor+Banks has got the advantage of drilled lugs, and that's if you want to put it on a strap, of course. At this stage, I should tell you, neither have got quick release spring bars, although I sometimes wonder how big an advantage that actually is. Both watches have got a screw down case pack as you'd expect. The Astor+Banks, as you can see, is rather plain, although there is some basic information engraved on it. Whilst the case pack on the San Martin, that's the one to the right, has got some really nice Chinese etching, which I believe says made by San Martin. Because of the nicer case pack and the fact that the San Martin is 2mm slimmer, I'm going to give it an extra point, although I haven't forgot the Fortitude has got the drilled lugs. So the Astor+Banks gets an 8 and the San Martin a 9. Whilst both watches got good bracelets, and one has only got a decent clasp compared to the other one's excellent clasp, I'll tell you now that is a clear winner. Now the bracelet on the Fortitude is a sort of a cross between an oyster and an H-link. It's fully brushed, it's very comfortable, and it's got screw pins for adjustment. To be honest, it's actually quite hard to fault. The clasp is okay, but nothing special. It's got a friction fit, and it's got a flip lock with 4 micro adjustments. The bracelet on the San Martin is very special. The tolerances are amazing, the finishing superb, and it's a type of oyster bracelet, but the middle links are slightly raised and the edges are highly polished. Like the Astor+Banks, it's got screw pins for adjustment. Now the clasp has got their new on-the-fly adjustment, similar to a glide lock system, and in my opinion it's easier to adjust than their old one. Whilst the bracelet on the Astor+Banks is more than respectable and something Seiko could only dream of putting on a watch, it falls short of the San Martin. For this reason the San Martin gets a 9 out of 10 and the Astor+Banks a 7. So let's compare the dial, the lume and the handset. Now this particular Fortitude is the mint green dial, which was the only one I was actually interested in. That said, although the colour is really nice, it is a tad vanilla if you see what I mean. It's quite classic with stick indices and a date window at my preferred 6 o'clock position. One thing I do prefer about it than the San Martin are the Dauphin hands, but that's just personal taste. The San Martin is what they refer to as a Zhuangzan dial, which is a pattern from a type of Chinese pottery, although it's actually made from enamel. For me it's more interesting than the Astor+Banks, although the dial layout is actually quite similar. The Astor+Banks Fortitude has got C3 lume, and for a guide watch it's actually very good, and it will last you the majority of the night, whilst the San Martin uses BGW-X1. Now the initial burst isn't as good as the C3, but the staying power is amazing and the lume will easily last 8 or 9 hours. I have to say that taking everything into account, I prefer the dial of the San Martin, so it's going to get an extra point. The SN0144 gets a 9, whilst the Fortitude gets an 8. When it comes to versatility, I just can't separate them. The cases are similar, the crystal's the same, and they both have 100 metres of claim water resistance. For this reason, they both get an 8 out of 10, but it's a shame neither have got a scratch-proof coating. Now the Fortitude comes in this rather nice soft leather single travel pouch. Inside would have been a 2-year warranty, and you also get a rather nice suede leather strap to match the dial in question. This is San Martin's 3rd iteration of their packaging, and by far the best. As you can see, it's a cylindrical faux leather watch case, and I suppose you could use it for travelling. Inside is a 2-year warranty and a few watch tools. I have to say I prefer the case of the Astor+Banks, and it's always nice to get the additional strap. I'm going to give the Astor+Banks 2 additional points, so it gets 9 out of 10 compared to San Martin's 7. The X Factor is always a difficult one, because nobody knows exactly what it is, we just know it exists and how it feels. The San Martin without doubt has got the prettier dial, and it's got the more blingier bracelet. However, there's something about wearing a hand-constructed watch from the USA that makes it feel just a little bit more special. As well as that, this mint green dial really does stand out. Initially I was going to give this to the San Martin, but on reflection I'm going to make it a draw, and both watches get an 8. So value for money. While the dial on the San Martin must have cost more to produce, as did the bracelet and clasp. However, screwing a watch together in the USA, QC checking it in the USA, and regulating it in the USA carries a lot more expense than doing it in China. Now, not including any import tax or duty, the cost of the San Martin SN0144 is around about £250 or $300, whilst the cost of the Astor+Banks Fortitude is $675 or £543. Yep, that's over twice the price. And purely from a specification point of view, you could actually argue the San Martin is a better watch. However, and as I've already said, The fact that the Astor+Banks is built in the USA justifies much of its additional cost. Taking everything into account, I still have to award this to the San Martin, which gets a 9 out of 10, compared to the Astor+Banks 7. So at the end of the day, the Astor+Banks Fortitude gets 71 out of 90, and the San Martin SN0144 gets a 73. I don't know about you, and I look forward to reading your comments below, but I'm starting to re-evaluate watches. Some time ago I realised established high street brands are overpriced and underspec compared to micro brands. Now I'm starting to think micro brands are overpriced and underspec compared to Chinese factory brands. It's true that once upon a time most Chinese watches were either rubbish or just close copies of Swiss or European brands. But now companies such as San Martin are producing their own designs and making them to an incredibly high standard, yet charging a far lesser price. I accept that there are politics to consider here, but if you refuse to buy Chinese, then your house would be probably empty and you'd be walking around half naked. Making these head-to-head videos is extremely hard work, and it takes a lot longer than a straightforward watch review, so I would be really grateful if you could click on the like button if you have enjoyed it. Subscribe if you haven't already. Most importantly, leave your comments below and enjoy the rest of your day.